I silly sit here in my old rocking chair on the porch of this weathered cabin, the one I've *9, called home for nigh on 40 years now, overlooking one misty hills of rural West Virginia. The autumn leaves are turning again, that deep crimson that reminds me of blood long since spilled, and the chill in the air bites at my bones like an old enemy I can't quite shake. I'm 72 now, folks, and the weight of all those years presses down on me heavier than the fog rolling in from the valley below. But it's not the cold that keeps me up at night anymore, it's the memories. The kind that creep in when the world's gone quiet, whispering about betrayal and the slow burn of vengeance that only a man who's lost everything can truly understand. You see, there was a time when I thought family was unbreakable, a sacred bond forged in the fires of hardship. But life has a way of teaching you otherwise, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of how I learned that lesson the hard way. It's about a secret I carried for decades, a wrong so deep it festered like a wound that never heals, and the day I finally set it right. Pull up a chair, listen close, because this ain't just a tale, it's my confession, my regret, and my redemption all wrapped in one. My name's Elias Hawthorne, though most folks around these parts just call me Old Eli. I was born in the shadow of the old coal mines back in '53, in a town called Blackridge that ain't much more than a ghost now. Grew up hard, like most did then. Father lost to a cave-in when I was 10, mother scrubbing floors till her hands bled raw to keep food on the table. I married young, to a woman named Clara, sweet as mountain honey and tough as the oaks that line these hills. We had 2 kids, a boy, Samuel, who took after me with his stubborn streak, and a girl, Beatrice, who had her mother's gentle heart. Life wasn't easy, but it was ours. I worked the mills, textile factories that chewed up men and spat out the dreams. 40 years of sweat and noise, breathing in cotton dust till my lungs felt like they were lined with gravel. Clara passed 15 years back from the cancer that came from all that second-hand poison I brought home on my clothes. God, I miss her every damn day. She was the light in my darkness, the one who kept me from breaking when the world tried to grind me down. But this story ain't about the mills or the mines, not directly. It's about family, or what happens when that family turns rotten from the inside out. It starts with my son, Samuel. He was always the ambitious one, left Blackridge as soon as he could, headed to the city, Charleston, with its bright lights and promises of something better. Married a woman named Lydia, sharp as a tack but cold as winter frost. They had a boy, my grandson Jacob, born in '05, a scrawny little thing with eyes that saw too much even as a babe. I didn't see much of them after they moved. Samuel said the drive was too long, the air too thick with the past. But I'd send cards, call on birthdays, try to bridge that gap. Then, about 10 years ago, Samuel died in a car wreck. Drunk driver, they said, though I always wondered if it was more than that. Lydia remarried quick, to a man named Harlan Voss, a slick-talking real estate developer with a smile that never reached his eyes. That's when the trouble started, slow at first, like a leak in the roof you don't notice till the whole ceiling caves in. I remember the first hint of it like it was yesterday. It was a crisp fall day in 2015, Jacob was 10, and I'd driven down to Charleston for his birthday. The house was one of those McMansions, all glass and sharp angles, nothing like the cozy cabins back home. Harlan greeted me at the door with a handshake that felt like he was sizing me up for a coffin. "Eli, good to see you," he said, but his eyes said otherwise. Inside, the place was spotless, like a showroom, no toys scattered, no life mess. Jacob was quiet, too quiet for a boy his age. When I gave him the wooden train set I'd carved myself, his eyes lit up for a second, then dimmed when Harlan snorted. Wooden toys, quaint, but the boy's got an iPad now. Modern times, old man. Lydia just smiled thinly, didn't say a word. Later, when I was tucking Jacob in, he insisted on it, even at 10, I noticed the bruises on his arms, faint but there, shaped like fingers gripping too tight. "What happened here?" Son? I asked, my voice low. He pulled the blanket up quick. Fell playing soccer, Grandpa. But his eyes darted to the door, and I knew. Oh, I knew. But what could an old mill worker do? I mentioned it to Lydia on the way out. She waved it off. Boys play rough, Dad. Harlan's just firm with him, teaches discipline. I drove home that night with a knot in my gut, but I let it go. Fool that I was, I let it go. Years passed, and the visits grew fewer. Jacob turned distant on the phone, his voice flat, like he'd learned to hide behind walls. I'd hear stories from neighbors who'd seen Lydia in town. Harlan's business was booming, flipping houses, but there were whispers of shady deals, folks getting evicted from homes they'd lived in for generations. Harlan had a temper, they said, especially when crossed. By 2020, the pandemic hit, and everything locked down. I was alone in my cabin, Clara gone, Samuel gone, Beatrice off in California with her own family. The isolation gnawed at me, but it gave me time to think, to remember. That's when the old secrets started bubbling up, the ones I'd buried deep, from my time in the mills. You see, back in the 80s, I wasn't just a line worker. I was union representative for a spell, fighting for better conditions after a fire killed 3 men, including my best friend, Tom. The mill owner, a man named Victor Voss, Harlan's father, as it turned out, was a ruthless bastard. Covered up safety violations, bribed inspectors. I had evidence, documents I'd smuggled out, photos of faulty wiring, witness statements. But Victor threatened my family, said he'd make sure Clara lost her job, that Samuel wouldn't get into college. I backed down, buried those papers in a lockbox under the cabin floor. The mill closed anyway, Victor got rich off insurance, and I lived with the guilt. When Harlan married Lydia, I recognized the name but said nothing. Thought it was coincidence, or fate's cruel joke. But as the years wore on, and I heard more about Harlan's ways, evicting widows, bulldozing historic sites for condos, I saw the apple hadn't fallen far. And when Jacob's bruises turned to stories of accidents, I knew the Voss blood ran true. It all came to a head in the winter of 2023. I'd been feeling poorly, cough from the old dust acting up, but I decided to surprise them for Christmas. Drove my rusty Ford through the snow-slick roads, the kind that twist like snakes down the mountains. Arrived unannounced, pulling into the driveway as dusk fell. The house was lit up like a casino, strings of lights twinkling, carols blasting from speakers. Through the window, I saw them, Harlan at the head of the table, carving ham with a flourish, Lydia laughing at something he said, their daughter, little Emma, maybe 8, clapping her hands. Guests too, business associates, by the look of them, suits and ties. But no Jacob. He was 18 now, home from his first semester at community college. Where was he? Then I saw him, huddled on the back patio, in nothing but a hoodie and jeans, snow piling on his shoulders like dandruff from God. His breath came in clouds, and he was rocking back and forth, arms wrapped tight. The temperature was dropping to 10 degrees, wind howling like a banshee. I banged on the glass door, but no one heard over the music. Jacob looked up, his face pale as death, eyes wide with a mix of relief and terror. "Grandpa," he mouthed, teeth chattering. I didn't think. I grabbed a log from the woodpile and smashed the patio door glass. Safety glass, it shattered into pebbles. The alarm blared, but I stepped through, pulling Jacob inside. The party froze. Harlan's knife hovered mid-slice. "What the hell?" he bellowed, face turning purple. "Jacob's freezing out there, you son of a bitch," I growled, my voice rough from years of shouting over machinery. I wrapped my coat around the boy, feeling how ice-cold his skin was. He'd been out there for hours, he whispered later, punishment for spilling wine on Harlan's carpet during prep. A simple accident, but Harlan called it disrespect, locked him out while they feasted. Lydia stood, hands fluttering. "Dad, you can't just what?" Save my grandson from hypothermia while you sip eggnog. The guests murmured, phones out, but Harlan waved them down. This is a family matter, Eli. You're trespassing. I looked at him then, really looked, and saw his father in those cold eyes. Family matter, like how your daddy covered up that mill fire. Killed good men, including my friend. The room went silent. Harlan's face drained of color. What are you talking about, old man? I had the lockbox in my truck. I'd brought it on a whim, like some inner voice told me it was time. But that was just the beginning. As Jacob warmed by the fire, I demanded they start. He spilled it all in whispers. Years of abuse, not just physical, belts, locks on the fridge, but emotional. Harlan controlled everything. Jacob's grades, friends, even his college applications. Lydia knew, but she was trapped, addicted to the luxury, afraid of poverty like we'd known growing up. And there was more, a secret Jacob had discovered. Harlan was forging deeds, stealing land from elderly folks in Blackridge, my hometown. One victim was old Mrs. Jenkins, Clara's childhood friend, evicted just last month. That night, I didn't call the cops, not yet. I took Jacob home with me, daring Harlan to stop us. He blustered, threatened lawsuits, but I saw the fear. Back in the cabin, as Jacob slept in the guest room, I dug out that lockbox. The documents were yellowed but clear, proof of Victor's crimes, and links to Harlan's early involvement. He'd been the one falsifying records as a young accountant. The revenge built slow, like a fire in damp wood. First, I contacted a lawyer friend from Union days, got the papers authenticated. Then, I leaked them to the press, anonymously at first. Stories hit. Voss family scandal. Decades-old cover-up exposed. Harlan's deals dried up, investors fled. But that wasn't enough. I drove back to Charleston, confronted Lydia alone. Choose, girl, your son or that monster. She broke down, admitted Harlan had hit her too, but the house, the life. I showed her photos from the mill fire, bodies charred. This is what Voss men do. Break families. She flipped, testified about the forgeries, the abuse. Jacob added his story. Locked in basements, starved for lessons. The trial was a spectacle. Harlan in cuffs, screaming betrayal. He got 15 years for fraud, endangerment, assault. Lydia lost the house but gained freedom. She moved in with me and Jacob, turning the cabin into a home again. But the twist, the real gut punch, came after. Digging deeper, I found Harlan had known about me all along. Married Lydia to get close, thinking I had dirt on his father. He'd been poisoning Jacob against me, saying I abandoned Samuel. The abuse was partly to break the boy, make him loyal only to Harlan. When I confronted him in prison, through glass, he smirked. You think you won, old man. I broke your bloodline. No, I said, you mended it. Jacob's thriving now, studying law to fight for the little guy. Lydia's planting Clara's old garden. And me, I sit on this porch, wiser, heartbroken still, but at peace. Folks, if this tale stirred something in you, the fire of justice, the ache of loss, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories from an old man's heart. What's your take? Comment below. Stay strong out there.